Chicago Bears, you're on the clock. And in this mock draft, we're covering the Chicago Bears, all 7 rounds, every single pick. We're going to talk about the roster construction. We're going to talk about some of the changes. Let's get to it. So currently, as it stands, the Bears are one of the top teams in terms of cap space coming into the 2025 offseason. They've got a lot of changes. Obviously, we know Ben Johnson and some of his staff is going to start coming into the building and really trying to put their mark on the roster. But this is a team that's in transition. You know, they've got a lot of young pieces and a core that I think is really intriguing, you know, as we move forward. Obviously, they've got probably their quarterback in Caleb Williams. They have a couple of weapons in DJ Moore, Rome Odunze. Got to figure out what to do with Keenan Allen. They have some running backs, but do they believe in DeAndre Swift? We know Johnson and Swift have had some history together when they were in Detroit. You know, they got Roschon Johnson still. Cole Kmet at tight end is a young tight end that still is, I think, on the upswing. I think we could still see some growth from him with Ben Johnson, and we know Ben Johnson's offense needs a good, solid tight end one. The defense has some core pieces that are really good. They got some good DBs. They've got some edge there in Montez Sweat. They've got some linebackers that are kind of in the middle there, that age-wise that are still in their prime and still can give you some really good reps and can be really good. But does it fit the direction and vision of what Ben Johnson's looking to do? That's going to be the million-dollar question. I would love you Bears fans to post below. What do you think about this roster, and what do you think the Bears should or could be doing moving forward? I want to look at some of their key free agents. You know, obviously we know Keenan Allen's kind of a bigger name, but, you know, he's up there in age. I think Darrell Taylor is a guy that could certainly consider bringing back. He's had some up and down production in his time. But after that, it's just a lot of guys that I think have some intrigue. Tevin Jenkins is, I think, a priority, somebody that they probably will want to definitely look at bringing back and having in that offensive line room. Got some age, got some depth guys. You know, there's not a lot of guys that I'm thinking they have to jump all over. But as we go through this list, what do you guys think? Are there players that you want to see them bring back? Are you interested to see if they can develop Borum? You know, do you think some of these younger guys that they've drafted recently, you know, Jack Sanborn, he had a little bit of a hype there for a little while and then it dissipated over time. You know, what do they do with some of these free agents? I think they're probably going to try to sign a couple, but I think most of them probably get to walk. When you look at the depth chart of this team, it's interesting. I think they're probably in need of, and this kind of takes us into what I think their team needs are. I think they probably need offensive line help. I think they're going to need, you know, when I looked at the roster, I think they probably need a left tackle. I think they can put right on the right side, and I think that works. Probably one interior guy that can push for starting time. I think depth at center, a safety to go with Brisker. I think some wide receiver depth, because I don't necessarily think Keenan Allen's in their long-term plans, and even I don't know that Keenan Allen even comes back to them. You know, linebacker depth. I think these are all things that are probably some of their biggest needs at this point. I think when you look at this roster on the defensive side, I like the interior. You know, I like Gervin Dexter. I like Zach Pickens. I think those are young guys that they can work with and build around. Montez Sweat is a top-notch edge rusher. I think they have some solid depth piece edge rushers that maybe they could consider, you know, in Taylor, Robinson, but I think they still probably need another guy on the edge, and maybe even a second one that can develop for them. Austin Booker is a player that has some intrigue as well, you know, and then you have solid starting linebackers. You need depth. You've got solid DBs, you know, obviously Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, you know, Tyreek Stevenson. These are all guys that are going to give you good, strong, solid playable reps. I could see them use some depth. Kevin Byard, I could see them move on from him either this year or soon, and then you're looking for a guy to go next to Brisker. You know, so the defense, I think, has a decent starting foundation. I think they need some help there. And then on the offensive side, like I said, I think the offensive line is going to need some help, right? I think they need a guy to push for a startable center. I don't know that I really love what they've got there. And then I think they probably need an interior guy that can push for startable time. And then I think they need a left tackle. I think Darnell Wright is fine there on the right side. And I think you could, you know, so your offensive line needs some attention. And then, you know, do you get some depth for tight end? I love Cole Kmet. Been a big fan of him. Do you look at running back, you know, depth that could push for startable time in the future? Because we know that Swift isn't always the healthiest. And does Swift stick around in a Ben Johnson offense? That'll be interesting to see as well. And then some wide receiver depth. I mean, so obviously we're going to look in some different areas and see how the board falls. What do you guys think? Am I crazy on my idea of the roster and where it's at? You let me know. With that being said, let's get to this draft. We're going to make every single one of the Chicago Bears picks. Let me know as we're going through this what you guys think. Are we making good decisions? Are we picking players that are going to be best for your team? You'll see over here on the left the mock draft simulator, the PFF one, which we're using for this mock, is going to show you the picks that have been made. I think as we go through this, we're seeing interesting, right? Cam Ward, number one, it's kind of been back and forth. We've seen some mock drafts drop recently where some are considering that Tennessee could just take the best available player in the draft, and a lot are saying that's Abdul Carter. I think him, Travis Hunter, I think those are guys that would be in consideration for the top pick if you're not going quarterback. But you see here, PFF gave him Cam Ward, then Travis Hunter went 2 to Cleveland. Tet McMillan went to the New York Giants, which would be really surprising to me, especially if Shador or a quarterback is on the board. I think New York's probably going to definitely look towards quarterback. At least that's what I've been mocking to him. Or Abdul Carter, right? Like, I'm surprised Abdul Carter would fall this far, but if New England could get Carter at 4, that'd be huge for them. Then we see Jacksonville grab a corner. Then we see Vegas go after the quarterback. Jets grab Mason Graham. Mike Green, I think, would definitely be a surprise here, but he's a guy that's been flying up draft boards. I know that he's been a hot name here recently. And then obviously New Orleans grabs Will Campbell, the tackle from LSU. So that leaves us on the board with elite players. Here, with the way the position's kind of fallen out, you could look in a couple different directions. I'm still looking interior, or I'm still looking offensive line or defensive line. And that really just depends on how you rank the guys here, how you rank the different linemen. This high, I want to tackle, and because Calvin Banks is still available, for me it would be between him and Connerly, and really any of these top 5 tackles I like. I think as you're seeing Senior Bowl practices, I think Zabel's going to continue to fly off the board. He's showing out real well from North Dakota State, but with Calvin Banks here, it's kind of a no-brainer for me. I'm going Calvin Banks, tackle from Texas. That gives you your starting left tackle. You put him on one side and you lock it down. I mean, you need to protect Caleb Williams. You need to give him time. You can work on that interior, but you've got a lot going now with your 2 bookend tackles there. I think that's huge for them. And the one thing that you guys will notice in Chicago is, as a Lions fan, I've seen a lot of Ben Johnson, is he likes to move and he likes to get this offensive lineman out running around, doing some things, getting to the next level. The interesting thing I will be interested to see how he unlocks his playbook is in terms of Caleb Williams. He's the most mobile quarterback Ben Johnson's had, in my time watching him with the Lions. Goff is just not as mobile as Caleb, and what Caleb can do and the way he can kind of move and reset, I think will be really fun to see. So you're going to need athletic offensive linemen that can do some of those things. I'm not saying you need 5 Penei Sewells, but you need guys like that definitely have that athletic profile. So give me Calvin Banks and really set yourself up for success. All right, back on the clock at pick 39. We've seen a slew of edge rushers, offensive linemen, wide receivers, tight ends, even some running backs go in the draft. We are sitting on the board with a ton of edge rushers, and I think now is the time to get ourselves an elite one. Princely Umanmielen from edge rusher from Mississippi is an absolute stud. Dude's got an explosive first step. I mean, he brings it at 6'4", probably gonna, I haven't checked the official weigh-in, but 6'4", 255-ish range. The guy's first step is just hard to beat. He's one of those guys that I think you're gonna see somebody plug into their system and let him just be an edge rush, pass rush, get to the quarterback specialist from day one. Then back on the clock at pick 41. This is the direction we can kind of look a little bit differently. We don't necessarily have to look edge rusher. We don't have to look offensive line because we address those. Xavier Watts from Notre Dame would be a fun one if you think Kevin Byard goes now and you need a safety to step into a starting role sooner. Jihad Campbell, linebacker from Alabama, there's conversations about him being a first-round pick. So if you can get him early second, that would be huge for you. Tuamalu, edge rusher, great. Omar Norman Lott is a guy I love. He's been hot name during Senior Bowl week so far. Well, you know what? We're just going to go safety. We're going to take Xavier Watts. I'm a big fan of Xavier Watts. I think he gives me I don't want to say Kirby Joseph type vibes, but he gives me that ball hawk mentality type safety that you can put in the backfield there next to Brisker. Let Brisker be your tackle machine, and Watts can be a little bit of a do-it-all, right? He could play closer to the line. He could play deep and be a guy that can help you in coverage and go after the ball. I think he's one of those safeties that should be able to push for playing time on day one. With that being said, we're up to pick 72. So let's see if our receiver's still available, and he is. So we're going to go Isaiah Bond. He's just under 6 foot, but he's blazing fast. I think you can use him in a variety of roles on the offense. I think you could have him even out of the backfield if you want to do some trick plays and you're handing off the ball to him. So he's one of those guys that I think will be a really nice kind of third round selection that is going to step in and get some really meaningful play for a team from day one. He's done it at Texas and he's looked good doing it. All right, back up at pick 148. We have now taken a few different positions. Let's see what's available. I'm a big Dorian Strong fan. We've taken a DB. Monheim, the center from USC. I'm a huge fan of him. I've been a fan of him for a couple of years now. I know he's had some up and down times at USC, but I think he's shown that he can hold up well. I think at the next level, he's going to be a guy that you could use as a center guard combo depending on injuries. And I've kind of talked myself into him. He's probably going to be the player I look at, but I just want to go through the list so you can see kind of who's available at this point. Jordan James from Oregon will be a fun player at the next level. We don't need quarterback. We drafted receiver. Conyers from Texas Tech is an intriguing tight end. He'd be a fun depth tight end. Love Riley Mills. Mondon's fun. Okay, so we're going to go with Jonah Monheim. I think what he does is he can give you a little bit of everything, right? He can play you at any of the interior positions, and I think he'll do well at any of the interior positions. And he's holding up well in Senior Bowl practices. If you've gotten a chance to watch the network coverage of it, he's done well so far, and I think you'll continue to see that. I think teams will fall in love with him during this process because he's kind of that utility player that you can use in a variety of roles. Back up at 197, let's see what we got. We're going to go a different direction, and we're going to grab a running back here. I like Jaquindon Jackson from Arkansas. He's had an interesting path to the NFL. I think you've seen some versatility in his game, and he's a big, physical, powerful runner. May not be the fastest, but he's very patient, which I think could be fun in Ben Johnson's offense. I mean, think about the running backs that he's used. Patience is a virtue, but he's willing to use a bruiser and a speedster. And I think he has a speedster in Swift, and I think Roschon can give you those types of vibes, but then you need a bruising running back to go with it. All right, back on the board at pick 235. At this point, it's grab a best player, right? Grab a guy that can develop, that has some tools, that has some traits. And one guy that we've been hearing quite a bit so far during Senior Bowl week is Carson Vincent, the tackle from Alabama A&M. He's an interesting player, and I know that we've drafted tackle already. I think he probably is in consideration to slide inside as well. And if he's sitting here with the hype that he's been getting and the intrigue that has shown him, he's a big kid. He's a massive human being. I'm going to draft him here because I think that would be a really interesting pick for the Bears, a developmental depth piece that you can bring in, a small school prospect that could develop into something for you in time. And, just to see what's sitting here on the board, I don't necessarily think there's a guy that I want to jump all over at any position that gets me excited. We've grabbed receiver, we've grabbed running back, we've grabbed offensive line, defensive line, we've grabbed safety. There hasn't been a linebacker that I was wanting to jump all over. So I think we're going to grab Vincent just because I think the intrigue has been there for him so far in this draft process. And he gives you a developmental player that you could stash, that you could potentially use down the road, especially if you don't love the starting five that you've got. This is a solid group for you. So let's kind of look at it. We got to be, obviously PFF doesn't love Calvin Banks, which is crazy to me. Most people do. Edge rusher, grab you safety, wide receiver, center. A lot more offense than defense, which is surprising. I kind of thought I'd lean more defense than offense, but again, this doesn't factor into free agency. This doesn't factor in a lot of things. So if you had this draft, what would you think, Bears fans? Let me know in the comments. I love to have the conversation with you guys as always. We'll talk to you later.